Hi, everybody. Hi, Singh.
Hi Joe, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'll mute myself.
Joe, it's Christine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Yes.
I'm trying to do it on my daughter's laptop for the first time, so I want to make sure I'm goofing up here.
It's just past 6:30, so I think we'll get started. So before I call the meeting to order, I just have a short preamble. Good evening and welcome to the April 23rd, 2020 meeting of the City of Norwich City Council and Board of Education Ad Hoc Committee. The committee will seek to comply with the directives of Executive Order 7B-1 issued by Governor Ned Lamont on March 14, 2020, together with any executive orders subsequently issued which pertain to such meetings. This meeting is being live streamed in real time on the City of Norwich website, www.norwichct.org. The general public is also welcome to listen to the meeting by using the call-in number and meeting ID listed on the meeting agenda. Many of you have joined this meeting as participants via the meeting link that was sent to you by email, and you may have noticed that your microphone is muted upon joining the meeting. Please help to keep background noise to a minimum by muting your mic until you are ready to speak to the meeting. As a committee member, if you would like to speak during any part of the meeting, you can click on your personal meeting icon and click on the raise hand next to your name. Or if you are calling in as a committee member, you can press star 9 to raise your hand. When it is your turn to speak, you will be recognized by the chairman and you can unmute your mic. Please state your name prior to speaking. As a member of the general public, you have joined this meeting by calling in. Your microphone is also muted upon joining the meeting. You are welcome to listen in to all or part of the entire meeting tonight. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and that the media may be present for all or part of the meeting. At this time, please mute all background devices and we will begin. Thank you. I would like to call to order the special meeting of the City Council and Board of Education Ad Hoc Committee. This is Thursday, April the 23rd, 2020. This is a Zoom, a virtual meeting, and it is being recorded. The time is 6:33 p.m. At this time, I see that we have a quorum, and I'd like to move on to agenda item number 2, the adoption of the March 13th, 2020 meeting minutes. I understand that there are a couple of corrections that we need to make to the meeting minutes. Item number 1, there were a couple of concerns about the nominations and the seconding of nominations for chair, vice chair, and recording secretary. I may have had some mistakes in my notes. I was writing pretty fast there. So I had a conversation with Mrs. Romansky, and I believe that we might have a couple of mistakes there. Excuse me.
Joe,
yeah.
This is Heather. So I was a few minutes late to that first meeting, and you had done all the nominations, and the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary had been elected. So we just need to sub my name in 3 and 5 with whoever that was, and I'm just not sure who it was because, like I said, I was a little bit late.
Right. So in item number 3, election of the chairperson, my notes had Heather nominating myself for chairman, with a second by Mark Betancourt. Obviously, that was inaccurate. So, does anybody remember who made that nomination?
No.
Sorry, this is Tricia. I believe it was Mr. Kulos.
Yeah, it was me that nominated you, Joe.
Okay, Christine, do you have that change?
Yep, I'm noting it right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Number 4 looks to be okay, and then number 5. So the nomination of Christine for recording secretary. Again, I had Mrs. Romansky making the nomination, and that note was inaccurate. Does anybody remember that they were the one that made that nomination?
It was Trish. Was it Trish?
I don't know.
Tricia, it wasn't you that nominated me?
I'm having difficulty unmuting Tricia.
Yeah, I think it was her, Joe, because I remember just being surprised. So I think it was her.
This is Stacy Gould. I believe it was I who made the motion.
Oh, okay. She was across from me. That's right.
Okay.
Trisha, if you're looking to unmute, it's in the top.
I
Right
finally found it. Thank you. It's just, it was going all over the place.
Wonderful.
So it was Stacy Gould who nominated? Is that what?
Yes, I believe it was me.
Okay.
Okay, so aside from those changes, are there any other changes or additions to the 3:13 meeting minutes? Okay, hearing and seeing none. I'll accept a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll make that motion. This is Stacy Gould.
I'll second.
I'll
Mark Koulis.
Seconded by Mark Koulis. Thank you both very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any committee members opposed? The chair votes yes. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 3, old business. The review so 3A, review and purpose of scope of the ad hoc committee. I certainly don't want to read the entire resolution. I've highlighted one part which is central to not only this meeting, but also all of our meetings. And it says that the committee shall provide the members of this committee an opportunity to communicate, share information and ideas, and to collaborate regarding the means by which the city may best meet the financial provisions necessary for the educational needs in Norwich. So having said that, that is our focus, and that'll be the direction of this and our future meetings. Moving on to old business 3B, the review of the 2020/21 education budget draft and related documents. In your email and also attached to the agenda that was posted on the city's website were all the related documents that I had in my possession as of the most recent budget hearing. Those are all the documents that were in my possession. Again, they were all sent to you in an email, and I don't believe that we need to go through them one at a time. They are the budget questions and responses. They are also the Norwich Public Schools budget presentation to the city on 4/14/2020. The Norwich Public Schools budget matrices and budget projections is really what those are. The NFA tuition letter and the NFA budget presentation. Those 5 documents constitute the information that we have in hand, in addition to the draft budget that we have all received.
All right. Did you receive the amended NFA information from Kristen and also her comments today?
So if you were talking about the amended NFA information, that was the substance of the meeting, whether it was, I think it was yesterday or the day before. I haven't received any documents, and I haven't checked my well, actually, I did just check my email. I haven't received any new documents, but we can take that up under new business as we talk about item 4B. So everyone has access to that list of documents that I just described?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I see people nodding yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to new business. Discussion of submitted questions. So at our last meeting, I submitted 10 questions that I had come up with. I shared them with the committee, submitted them to the superintendent. She gave us a lengthy and thoughtful set of responses. I just have a couple of comments on just a few things that I picked up, and then I would like to open it up to the floor so the members can either ask follow-up questions of the superintendent or discuss the answers that we have been provided. So just quickly, on question number 7, I asked specifically how will an assistant for special education save budget dollars for the district? And on the 3rd bullet, the response was the employee would help to ensure that all programs are operating lawfully, which would continue to save money in legal bills and conflict resolution about individualized programs and plans. My only quick follow-up to that, and we don't have to get into the discussion, if superintendent, if you just want to write this down and then we can come back to it under discussion, that would be fine. My question was, how much money is the district spending now annually on those types of lawsuits that would be, what you're saying would be, very well may be avoided? Then again, on number 9, I asked the question, how does hiring an administration level HR director demonstrate fiscal restraint over placing an HR clerk in City Hall under the supervision of the city's existing director of HR? So, and the answers are there, okay, but I asked this question during the city council hearing, I should say the education budget hearing, and I also asked the question of the HR director for the city of Norwich. She sent me a follow-up email that just said that HR in City Hall would need a 1.0 person added to the Human Resources Department in order to take over these job or take over this job description and these job tasks. So I just wanted to be clear about that because
If I may add, Joe Markoulos, also the HR function in the schools is a bit different than the general HR that the city, it's very specialized as far as the duties, tracking teacher certification and continuing ed, things of that nature that generally aren't part of this normal city HR functions.
Fair enough. And then on question 10, this is the last thing, and then I'll open it up to the floor because I don't want to dominate the meeting. On question 10, where I asked, how does hiring an admin level payroll manager demonstrate fiscal restraint over placing a payroll clerk in City Hall under the supervision of the city's comptroller? When I asked this question of Josh Papier, who's in on this meeting, he said that he felt that he would need 2.0 full-time employees in the comptroller's office in order to do the payroll, and he can maybe expand on that a little bit further if the committee would like to ask him to do that. But that was the last piece of information that I got from him when we were having budget hearings in City Hall. So having said that, I'll be quiet and I'll open it up to the floor. Please, as I said, please indicate that you'd like to speak by raising your hand, and I'll call on you one at a time, and we can continue this conversation. The chair recognizes Mrs. Staley.
Well, before we go any further, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you envision this person who would do Board of Education HR under the direction of the city HR director. What does that look like, or what would you expect it to look like?
That's a great question. Thank you. So what I'm wondering is, instead of hiring an administrative level person in central office, can we have an HR clerk who manages the administrative piece, the technical piece, the checking Connecticut certifications, and doing all of the things that Mark has said need to happen for an HR person for a school system, which I understand that is unique, but it is a skill set that can be managed by somebody who is properly trained. So instead of having an admin level person in central office, we had a clerk level person in City Hall. That whole department is already being managed by the director of HR and the supervisory person in HR. So to me, my vision is more of a question. Why do we need another supervisory level person to do this in central office when we could maybe do this a little bit less expensively with a layperson added to human resources?
It's Tricia.
Yeah, you still have the floor. Yep.
Thank you. I think my question was more, what exactly do you expect this person to be doing? As in, who would be going through, if we get 40 to 100, which is not out of the question, applications for a teaching job, for example, who exactly is going to go through all these resumes? Who would you expect to be doing that?
Again, I would expect the director of HR in City Hall to train and supervise and all of the people, including the additional clerk person, to do everything that you just described and whatever else that the school board needs that person to do.
Okay, I'm going to submit that's not a clerical function. That is an administrative level function. Stuff like that is done by administrators. It's not done by clerks, because there's a whole bunch of professional aspects to it. And evaluation of programs that people have attended, evaluating certifications, evaluating other training, that kind of thing, what it means. And it's beyond just, I don't want a clerk doing that kind of thing. That's an administrator's job. I spent a good part of my time when I was an administrator doing that, and that's not anything that anybody would dream turning over to a clerk, no matter how good they are. It's just not a clerical job.
The chair recognizes Mr. Koulis.
In addition, I mean, then you get into the legal, the secrecy aspects also. I mean, people applying for jobs, oftentimes they don't want to let their present employer know that they're searching for jobs. Admittedly, the new clerk would possibly, you know, be sworn to secrecy or whatnot. However, you're opening it up where people would be very uncomfortable, not only applying to a school, but potentially opening their resume up to a city employee in City Hall as opposed to just the school district itself. I'm not sure if it might fly legally as far as you know, keeping these resumes in a secret manner. It may or may not fly with the Department of Education. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know. I have several responses to that, but you know, the insinuation is that the HR department in City Hall not maintain confidentiality. I think that that's a flawed argument.
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying that it would make people uncomfortable. I'm not sure if there are other towns which farm out their HR functions to the towns. Do you know of any that do that?
I know that in Colchester they had essentially a clerk that managed all of our HR files. I'll say I don't work there anymore, but all of the HR files for the school system was really overseen by the superintendent.
Okay. All right. Well, if it works, the only thing is, what do you envision as a timeline for this? I mean, not this budget cycle, but quite possibly a year, 2, 3 years down the road. I mean, it's not something that you would look at as an immediate swap in functions.
Well, again, this is just me talking as one member of the council, but I'm a little disappointed that this wasn't being, you know, given the state of the budget for the last 3 years that I've been involved in. I'm a little concerned that we've been talking about this, pushing this idea around for the better part of 3 years, and instead of investigating it really fully, I feel like the decision was just made. Well, you know what? We'll just hire people, in-house, and I'm disappointed that not enough conversations happened to really, try to further the idea of saving as much money on personnel as you can. My personal feeling, and I'll shut up after this. My personal feeling, okay, is that the last place that I want to add to the school budget is for people in central office. You want to talk to me about adding reading teachers? All for it. But
this is Stacy Gould.
I'm sorry, Stacy, I'll come right to you. Mrs. Romansky had her hand up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I don't have my hand up. I'm sorry. I have a bad finger, so I'm keeping it up because it's throbbing like there's no tomorrow. So, and it's really just a bad finger. I'm not doing anything naughty.
Okay, Stacy, go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to concur with your remarks concerning hiring someone else in central office who's been doing your HR up until now, that you've decided that all of a sudden now we need somebody at what, $125,000 a year plus the benefits to handle HR? Why now?
Would you like
all
me
of
to
a
speak to
sudden?
that?
Sure.
Okay, so this is Kristen Stringfellow, and I apologize if you did not receive my email today. I sent it to the 3 email addresses that I thought filed out to all of you, but I can certainly go over it. I was very confused when I watched first in our budget hearing and then in the other subsequent budget hearings with the city manager and with Josh and with Bridget that I had missed something. And so I spent the last week going back over to try to understand where this is all coming from, because it's not anything that was familiar to me at all. And so what I was seeing is the concept of Munis software and conversations about the $600,000 that was spent on the conversion of software for both sets of payroll and HR for both sets of HR, and procurement and revenue funds, entering into a conversation that made it seem like there was a plan that I should have known about, or a meeting that I would have attended, that would have led me to believe that there was some sort of orchestrated vision to combine all of these services. So I apologize if there was anything that I missed, but I sent you copies of the April 3rd, 2018 bond ordinance for Munis and the revised memo, both from Josh, from June 25th. And I went through them all line by line to see if I misunderstood something. And it looked to be what was explained to me by the Board of Education and Superintendent Dolliver when I took the reins. It was that the city used Munis to a software program to manage financials, procurement, HR, payroll, and revenue, that the Norwich Public Schools used Phoenix, and that the Phoenix was not being supported any longer as a software program. So Norwich Public Schools urgently needed to buy some sort of new software extremely soon. And it made sense to purchase Munis for transparency, for the two organizations to work closer together. We also have the Norwich Public Schools food service using QuickBooks, and adult ed and Norwich Public Schools on two different servers. And so Josh did a really nice job, I think, of laying out phase 1 plan, phase 2 plan, and the anticipated savings. And I read a lot of this before I took the position and after I took the position. And so my understanding of the anticipated savings that were planned were the elimination of the 2 copier contracts by 2022, the elimination of 1 staff member by attrition in 2023, and we've already eliminated 1 staff member by attrition. We eliminated in August the, and I'm not saying there's not a hope to have more efficiencies. I absolutely agree that there's a hope to have more efficiencies as we go forward. But I can go on and on. It's a 2-page sort of brief, a summation of what I saw were the original and subsequent anticipated savings. When I was hired, you know, I've discussed in pretty great detail at the goals session some of the challenges that we had in payroll and in HR. As you know, they're 2 separate entities. And payroll, we had 2 clerks. I had not heard of a plan to bring payroll over to the city side. One of our clerks abruptly quit with less than 2 weeks notice. And we did what I think was our due diligence and went to the Board of Ed and said, our payroll manager quit. This is an area where we habitually have every week overtime for, and I know that I mentioned that at the goal setting session, because it's a unique thing for me to see overtime in a school department when you're not dealing with some sort of a storm or disaster or crisis. This was a perpetual every week overtime with 2 union clerks. In addition to that, we were constantly bringing in temporary employees to support them. And before we hired anyone, we checked in with I sent Athena to go check in with the city, not knowing that this was something you had all talked about. I didn't know that. We just, thought it's right now, there's not an effective and efficient system. Before I go and hire somebody, I want to make sure that we've turned over every stone. Athena met with the folks in the city, and it was pretty apparent that that we could come up with a long-term plan. That's not dead in the water. And I write that in my brief, that we couldn't do something immediately. They couldn't handle our payroll. That's what was told to us, is that they could not handle our payroll with no added cost. We were told, just as Josh said in the meeting, that they would need to add staff. And so if we have the time to map out a long-term plan, is there a possibility to get even greater efficiencies in payroll? I would say yes. But for right now, the vacancy came as a surprise. Our payroll clerk is a union employee. With the abrupt resignation and the new munis conversion, we barely made payroll twice. So 2 different payrolls went by. Even with the gracious help of the city payroll department, both of our payroll employees and several of our central office staff members, we had dozens of errors that were made because it's such a big job. So under the circumstances, I believe we did do our due diligence. I believe that there still exists an opportunity to look for efficiencies, and that we already got that one savings by eliminating the adult education payroll member of our personnel. As for HR, that's an entirely different piece. HR for 900 employees, so there are, I think, 4 or 5 employees in the city payroll office. And I don't claim to have any expertise in municipal payroll governing, none at all. But I do have a whole lot of expertise in HR for school departments. And whoever said it earlier is absolutely right. The HR person reports directly to the superintendent. I interface with HR almost as much as I do with Amber and Jamie and Athena. It's a lock in terms of what we're doing together with FTEs, with approvals, with hiring, with evaluations. It's very, very, very complicated. And I mean no disrespect at all to the municipal HR folks. I presume they're terrific, but it's a different job. And we, as you know, had some significant challenges that we're still investigating. And our auditor, who's our shared auditor between the city and the school department, suggested strongly that we invest in a HR director who has experience with schools. And so that's what we did. If I misinterpreted something, a meeting was not held with me since I've been here to talk about putting these departments together. I certainly would be willing to, I mean, I work at the discretion of the Board of Ed, so I'm certainly willing to do whatever they'd like. But my expertise tells me that, and my experience tells me that if the 2 bodies would like us, John and Josh and Athena and I, to look at payroll over the next 4 years and map out a real plan, not just a budget concept, but a plan of these duties will be done by this person, this cross-training will be done by another person, that makes sense to me. I'm all on board for that. In terms of HR, I just very respectfully sort of plead with you all that I feel like that would not be a good direction for the school department. And it's got nothing to do with the talented folks at City Hall. It's like saying what I do and what John Salmon does are the same. They're not. We have very different roles and very different organizations that we're running. And so I'm sorry that I didn't send it to the right email address. I apologize. I can send it to you individually. I didn't know if it was going to come up today, but I certainly wanted to be prepared by reviewing everything that I could that would lead folks to believe that I should have known that these 2 things would have been merged. And lastly, and then I promise to be quiet, we hired these people already, and they're fantastic. So I hope that some consideration would be made to, letting John and I sit down and map out a different way or a more significant way to look at this, other than just saying, to Josh or Bridget, do you think you could handle that work? I don't know that they have a lens for that work. I know that I certainly don't have a very strong lens for their work. And so I thank you for giving me a little bit of airtime on that, Mr. Chairman.
Unmute, Joe.
Joe, you have to
All right,
unmute.
yeah, I got it. So Alderman Bettencourt, you have the floor. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Yeah, I'm not good at that either. So I'm going to come down as far as the HR situation goes. I'm going to come down on the side of Tricia and the point she was making. I mean, I make hiring decisions myself on on an all too regular basis, and those when you start going through resumes and applications and stuff like that, that's not something you delegate to clerical support generally, although I do occasionally use my subordinates to review some of the materials as a sounding board, but in general, it's my responsibility, so as a manager. So I think those were those kind of responsibilities, in that particular instance that Tricia used. So for the time being anyway, I think because it is such a different animal, I think when you start talking about education, the rules are entirely different. The CBA issues are entirely different. And things of that nature. When I first started working as a liaison to the Board of Ed a number of years ago, I got a rude awakening with all that stuff. So, but I certainly understand that particular aspect of it. That it is a different animal, and maybe at this point in time, anyway, until such time as a serious, all-encompassing plan could be brought forward to incorporate that kind of management structure into the city structure, which we don't have right now. I would think that you really can't wait on having a qualified HR person taking care of your business. I honestly believe that. Much as I hate dealing with HR, to be honest with you, on a regular basis, at least when they disagree with me, it's a necessary evil, like it or not. So I will come down on the side of I think we could have done a better job regarding the payroll issues. So either through communication or whatever. And that's something I think that we can definitely be working on in the future. So I think I've said my piece on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. So that really touches pretty hard and pretty significantly on questions 9 and 10 that I had put forward. But again, these are not my interpretations, and thank you for all your input. But as we are discussing all of the submitted questions, is there anybody on the committee that read any of those other answers and had either follow-up questions or comments that they would like to make on any of the responses?
Stacy Gould.
You have the floor, Stacy.
All right, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I believe that the offer was made by Josh and his office for payroll for the Board of Education to come over to the city side with a significant savings of, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, if you're listening, of $150,000. I believe that's what we were told at a recent meeting. And the offer was flatly rejected. So if I'm wrong in what I've heard, then please somebody correct me, but I believe the offer was made for the city to handle the Board of Education's payroll, and it was rejected out of hand.
Is that for me or for?
Well, Well, I think it was directed at Josh, but if either Josh or the city manager would like to address that here, that's, that would be welcome. If not, and I don't see either one of them raising their hand. So phone number 2165 has raised their hand though. Oh, the city man, hold on one second. Mr. Salamone, I see you raised your hand. Thank you very much. You have
I know
the floor.
I know that Josh is listening. I don't know if he can get in through the phone though. I don't think he's on the video. But there was an internal memo that I was copied on that had a worksheet attached to it that had approximately $150,000 in savings in payroll for the Board of Ed over a certain period of time, and then another 50 for us. And there was a worksheet attached to it, and it was sent to the Board of Ed offices. And then it was, I guess it was analyzed there, and about a week later, it was the offer was declined. So at that point, then we went in a different direction.
So that's, did you want me to respond or would you?
Well, I would just ask you to hold on one second because
Sure.
there would actually, we have one person who's been waiting. Last four of the phone number, 2165, you've had your hand raised.
Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, that's me, Joe. It's Pete Nystrom.
Oh, all right, Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
I'll be very brief. I saw the memo that John just spoke of, and that is, in fact, what it reported. And if I recall Josh's comments during the council meeting, that was a projection that was on the low side for potential savings. He told us in the meeting that the savings could have, in fact, been higher. I'll just share that amount. And thank you.
Thank you. So, Superintendent Stringfellow, you don't have to respond to that. If you'd like to say just a few words, because to use Stacy's phrase, I don't want to keep beating this dead horse. The note that I took down is that it seems that people on both sides of this equation, the BOE side, including the superintendent, and the city side, including the city council folks, are open to the idea of looking at this in terms of a long-term plan. That's great. However, you have the floor if you'd like to say something, Mrs. Stringfellow.
Thank you. I'll be so brief. I completely agree with you. We are happy to look at this in terms of a long-term plan. The part that I believe is incorrect is that Mr. Pothier's suggestions were summarily dismissed. It's not as simple as that. We had less than 2 weeks to make a decision. Athena had one meeting that I sent her to go talk with Josh. When she came back, she said that he would need to add 2 positions. We were adding 1 position. Perhaps one of his positions was Linda, the gal that already works with us. And I think we can absolutely work on that together going forward. But it didn't go down the way it's being characterized. It was an outreach to see if we could work together. And in a quick manner, we weren't able to. And so in the long term, would love to work together on this.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. So,
Joe, this is can I speak for 1 second?
Yeah.
I figured out how to raise my hand on there.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead. Athena Nagel, you have the floor.
So I just want to echo what Kristen said, that, we had to get payroll run. We just had to get it done. Josh couldn't take payroll like that day. And I'm not faulting Josh at all. I mean, I don't know how he could any more than we could, but we had to get payroll run. There were 7 of us that are not even trained in payroll that had to work together to make that first payroll run, and we barely made it. You can ask the city. I think they finished at like 11 o'clock at night or something like that. It was crazy. But I do echo with Kristen. I mean, this isn't something we can just do because somebody walks out the door. We need to be able to plan for it, because even Josh has some changes coming up in payroll. So he can't just throw all of this at that person. We need to plan for it. I don't think it needs to be necessarily a 4-year plan, but it needs to be not a 2-week plan. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. So still on 4A on our agenda, discussion of submitted questions. I'll ask again, were there any of the other responses to the 10 questions that people would like to either follow up on and discuss at this time, or expand on? Okay, I will take that as a no from a group. So we will move on under new business to 4B, which is discussion and possible action on a recommendation to the city council. Obviously, I have 3 city council members here. The mayor is listening in, and we've got a budget puzzle to solve. It's my hope that this group can have a productive conversation, is what I'm trying to say, about where do we go from here. So obviously we've had the sticker shock. We had a lot of conversation about the different options and the budget that the board put forward. And so now, what does this group say to the council, at all, to find a way to fund the school system and not kill the taxpayer? So I'll open the floor up for discussion on that topic. Alderman Bettencourt, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I think some of us, a few of us were at a meeting, a telecom meeting the other day about NFA's special education budget. So there was some question as to the line items there, and going over what NFA was saying their numbers were, and what the numbers are in the BOE budget. The mayor was saying that the overall special ed budget could be off by as much as $1.9 to $2.1 million, and I think that was what NFA was saying. So I mean, that's a big amount. So I am not sure where any of that was going. If anyone's had a chance to review all that and see where we're going there. So.
All right, thank you. So, Mrs. Romansky, I see you have your hand up. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. So I was a part of the teleconference that Mr. Bettencourt is talking about, and since then, obviously, we have followed up on that because there was an assertion that we had made some math mistakes. So in an effort in good faith to do some checking on that, and I'm happy to see Jamie here in case we have more specific questions, but it's my understanding that the numbers that were provided to Mayor Nystrom and City Manager Solomon, there were not the numbers we had at Norwich Public Schools. So Superintendent Stringfellow tasked Mrs. Bender with researching that and sort of making sure our numbers were, see where the problem was. And it's my understanding that Jamie spoke specifically with the special education director at NFA, and I believe her name is Mrs. Wheeler, but her numbers and students jive with what Jamie has, and this is where I might be off. So Kristen Stringfellow and Jamie, I think there was 21 students missing. I don't have that document in front of me. I'm sorry.
I sent you all an email on this with a revised spreadsheet, Mr. Chairman, to show you what we're looking at in terms of the cost projection as of the March 23rd Board of Education vote. And then I took the information that NFA gave us. And actually, Mrs. Romansky, we had a couple of more conversations today after I briefed you. Our numbers and NFA numbers are pretty close, like within 2 students. The difference that we found, because we had to uncover what was the difference, is that they were sharing, and it's if I send an email to City Council at Norwich, do you all get it, or does that go to one person?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there, we get comments from the public, that are sent to all city council members. And
So
I know
I sent that. That's what I used as the email address. I sent it to the manager. I sent it to the manager's administrative assistant. I sent it to the city council. I very much apologize. I thought by doing that, you'd each get a copy, similar to the way I send it to the Board of Ed, and they all get a copy. But we are estimating that the NFA cost projection, with all of their increases in tuition, not just PACE and resource SACHM, would be $1.2 million, $1,256,003. The note that they sent off to the mayor and John Salamone spoke only to the PACE program and the resource at SACHM, and that's the discrepancy. So we don't disagree with their interpretation of how much it will cost for they're saying 35 students in the PACE program, and we're saying 37, but of course these are on student projections that have not been realized yet. So we don't know exactly which programs the children will be attending, but to be within 2 children out of 1,500 is very, very close. We are on the same page, but they're speaking of only 2 programs and didn't weigh in on the other 6 programs. We're quite frankly, a majority of our children are, but that's not where a majority of the major increases in their tuition were. May I send it to you now in a different email so that you could at least put a visual to it, to you personally?
Well, I would just suggest that if you want each and every one of us to get it, to use our individual city emails, and you can create a distribution group to
I'll try that right now. I apologize. I thought
no need
that's
to
the way
apologize.
you got it.
Mr. Mayor, I see that you had your hand raised.
I will only say that I saw the recent email from our superintendent just as this meeting began. I had not had a chance to be on in the emails throughout the afternoon and even evening, so I apologize if others hadn't seen this. I would have sent it out immediately to everyone if I had known it had been received. And I try to do that with anything of this nature.
And I appreciate that, and better that we're finding out about it now, and we're all about to get our hands on it, versus at some point down the road, a month from now, when we need to have a budget finalized. Mr. Koulos, the chair recognizes you have the floor. You need to unmute. There you go.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Just checking, Kristen, that 1.2 million, was that just the NFA special ed, or that was the total increase in tuition, special and general?
Total. It's total for tuitions. It's not including out of district special education, or I'm just trying to make sure I'm sending them the most updated one, because there were several iterations.
Well, we were just talking the NFA budget, correct?
Right. Yes, it is NFA, but it's NFA. We spend another $7 million on paraeducators, speech and language, teacher of the hearing impaired, behavioral specialists, transportation, and out of district placements. The 1.2 million additionally is tuition. So our tuition, if the rate stayed the same right now, for 1,513 children, our tuition would be $888,271, and with their increases, at the lowest 3.01, at the highest 65%, it brings us to a tuition of $24,144,274. And so that's what I'm sending you off right now. And I apologize. I can't find Mrs. Miles. Hold on for a second. She's the only one I'm struggling with. I don't know that I ever sent her a email, so it won't recognize her.
Yeah, so I'm assuming
I'm
the other
sending it-
categories, the paras, the transportation, the delta on that is basically flat as far as
unless they do what we have done, have contractual, I shouldn't speak about that because I'm not certain if it's, there are paras. So our paras would get the same contractual increase that Heather's getting me, Ella's email, I'm sorry. So those will go up, but I don't know exactly how much they will go up. So I kept them flat, but I put a disclaimer to say that they're 1920 school year information for the other non-tuition costs. Sorry. So you should have those except for Ms. Miles. And someone's texting me her contact information, and then I will send hers as well. Oh, I got it. I was spelling Miles incorrectly. I apologize.
All set, Mark? Yeah. So I would like to take us back to where I believe our attention really belongs, and it's really at that 20,000 foot altitude oversight of how we put, how do we put an entire budget together and focus on the education part of that. And I'll start by just giving what my perception was of the budget that the board put forward, and what I now know as to be the reality. And then I'll open the floor again and let the rest of the committee talk freely. It was my understanding, I understand, again, errantly, right? But it was my understanding that the 3-year plan, well, let me back it up a little bit. The fact that the primary goal was to get us, and because I'm saying us because we're all in this together, to get us to the point where we were no longer deficit spending. Perfect. And the secondary goal was, the reduction on the reliance on grants. I don't know that you can do both those things in the in the same 3-year plan. Okay, I just don't know that that's possible. But here's where my perception led. It was 9.11 final at the last time we looked at this, 9.11 increase if we were trying to solve this problem in 1 year. I understood and interpreted the 3-year deal to say, listen, all right, instead of coming up with 9.11% increase in 1 year, we're going to spread it out over 3 years, whether it be 5.5, 5.5 again in the second year, and 4.5 in the third year. Now that's, 15.5% increase over the course of 3 years. So to me, I looked at that and said, okay, well, it's almost like you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Or, it's like, well, you can cough up 9.11% now this year, or you can cough up 15.5% over the course of 3 years. We end up in the same place. What my understanding was that either the 9.11 or the 15.5 over the course of 3 years meant that no more money would be coming out of undesignated fund balance. That the 3-year plan was going to cost us more over time, but was going to get us to the same place because if you look at 9.11 in year 1 and then plus a 2.9 plus a 2.9, right? That is about 15%. Or you can have 15.5% over the course of 3 years. Either way, we end up in the same place. So I was a little bit taken back when I was like, oh, well, if we go with the 3-year plan, we're still going to have to come up with, if you do the math based on the spreadsheet, you're still going to have to come up with $4.2 million out of undesignated fund balance. And that's just this year. And I just don't see any way that we can do that. So that was my understanding. I understand that was inaccurate. That was a misinterpretation on my part. However, that's where we stand. And I'll stop talking at that and open it up to the floor. And nobody wants to touch that one. Okay.
Oh, I'll touch it. This is Stacy Gould.
You have the floor, ma'am.
So I was under the same impression that you were, that, okay, we could do this 9 or we could do the 3 5s. We're going to get to the same place. Just takes us a little longer. It's like, you want to remortgage your house for 20 years or you want to remortgage it for 30 years. And that we were not going to be touching the unrestricted fund balance. And now we're hearing that absolutely you're going to be touching the unrestricted fund balance. And we cannot survive like this as a city tapping into, this is not, anybody's private account that we could just say, well, we're up short a little bit here and we need to get a little cash out of it. This is not going to the way it's going to work. It cannot work like this.
Does that conclude your remarks?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Stacy. Alderman Bettencourt, I saw that you had your hand up, sir.
Yeah, I guess I'll sort of echo Stacy's comments there, because I think at the end of this year, I think the number I saw would be at 10.1%, and we certainly don't want to go below 10%. I honestly don't believe that using the unrestricted fund balance is an option for anyone at this point in time anymore. So I'm going to ask that you all take that into consideration, and and we've got to be honest with you, I think it's the city council's responsibility to hold everyone to that. So if that's the case, so because otherwise we won't, we're going to start talking about having our bond rating affected and everything else going on. So, but we have to have that reserve.
Thank you. Mr. Koulos, you have the floor.
Yeah, my understanding with all the plans was that it was only a one-time this coming year where we would dip into the undesignated fund balance, and then any subsequent years, there would be no dipping into the undesignated fund balance. So it's just a one-shot this current coming up budget year, and then using those numbers, whether it's 5% or 4% or whatever it is over X number of years. So it would only be this first year where we would dip in, and then subsequent to that, our finances would be on a footing where we would not have to dip in further.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with you. I'm looking at the superintendent's face. She's nodding her head no. It's my understanding that if we follow that 3-year plan, 5.5, 5.5, 4.5, that each and every one of those years until you hit the 2.9, right, that there's going to be an expectation of fund balance kick in. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor, sir.
Be brief. One, I want to thank everyone for participating in these calls and in this committee, because having these discussions throughout the process is a really good thing for us to do, and it opens the door for more understanding. The fund balance is there to mitigate the downturn in revenue for the city for all departments, not just one. And this would be the 3rd year that the reserve fund balance is going to be hit as it stands right now. And we can't go below 10%. I'd also point out that we're anticipating a substantial shortfall in tax revenue due to the COVID-19 impacts, and that's really why the reserve fund balance is there, to handle those kinds of events. Now, no one could have foreseen this kind of an event, but it's all here at the same time. So we're really going to have a lot more discussions, I think, going forward. But I agree with the chairman and the superintendent. It was not a one-time additional hit this year. It was going to go on into the future, and that just has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Romansky, you have the floor.
Heather Romansky. So just for the sake of saying this so everyone's on the same page, the chart that we're referring to, because I don't know who has the PowerPoint up, but is the chart with all the options, and there is a line at the bottom of that table that says green font, which if you have a black and white printout doesn't help you, but green font indicates the year we stop relying on the city's fund balance. So I know it's like bottom of the table, and I get how people got mixed up, but that was kind of a line on that chart. So and just from my own personal perspective, I sometimes feel like, and this might just me taking it personally, but and I won't speak for the rest of the board, I don't personally sit down and approve a budget with the intention that we're not going to live within it, and that we're going to have to come to the city to ask for more money. That's never the intention when I set out at the beginning of the year. And I'm not going to climb up on my soapbox about unfunded mandates and legal thing, because we've all had this conversation with me before. But there are some costs that we don't have control over. So that it's not an excuse. It just makes it a little more challenging. So, and I will yield the floor.
Thank you very
much. Now you
much.
changed the mute myself. Oh, good, you did it.
Okay. So I hope that you guys can see that. I have shared, this is the first time I've tried this in this particular app. I shared the page of the presentation that Mrs. Romansky is talking about. First of all, can you see that? For those of you who are on video conference. So I know that the board, I believe that all of us are keenly aware of this particular sheet, but this is obviously what we are talking about. And to address that second comment from Mrs. Romansky, yeah, I never think that there's malice involved in this. And I don't take it that way. I know that sometimes my delivery may not project that properly, but no, I don't believe that there's malice in this, and I don't believe that there also is apathy or lack of sensitivity to what this council has to face. The board is trying its best to do its job. The superintendent is trying to do her best to do her job. And the city council is trying to make it all work in terms of dollars and cents. We're all in this for the right reason. I really believe that. Sometimes our frustration comes through, and especially for me, in the tone of my voice. But yes, I completely agree that nobody is taking shots at anybody else from one board to the other, or even interpersonally. Mr. Betancourt, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, the Board of Ed budget goes, I certainly don't believe that anyone, is doing anything with any kind of malice. And if anything, they're doing it with the thought of doing what's in the best interest of the kids, so the children. So, that is a laudable thing. I mean, obviously, I don't take issue with that. I mean, you should be advocating for the children. Now, that's where you should be coming from. We on the city council, though, have a different, somewhat different perspective. We got to look to find some kind of balance. Unfortunately, what's happened in the last few years is drain the unreserved fund balance, and will continue to cause some other issues for us if we continue to let it go. So, and this way of doing business is an entirely new and different thing. I'm not sure why it's happening. I know in the past, the city council lays out a number, and that's basically the number. But I mean, things can happen and change, and we work with the Board of Ed to, sometimes we got to move some money around and allocate some more money if something crazy happens, special ed costs are higher than anticipated, whatever, things you got no control over. So, but the problem is with this budget, the 5.5% isn't a real number. And to be honest with you, I gotta, from a budgeting perspective, I think we have to start dealing with real numbers. What's the real number where we're not tapping the undesignated fund balance? So I guess that's the 9.11 from what I get. But thank you for shaking your head. I figure that's what it is. So now if that's the case, then we got a real issue. So because there's no way in God's green earth that that's going to happen. And I don't think, in good conscience, we can tap the fund balance anymore. So there's going to have to be some give and go someplace. So something's got to go on that end. So that what happens, how it happens, and stuff, that's the Board of Ed's purview. But what the bottom line number is our purview. And it's our purview also to to make sure that that's what happens. So I'm just asking you to keep in mind that you do have a fiduciary responsibility here, that you should be upholding, whatever the budget amount is when we get finished with this process. I hope you do, because if you don't, we're gonna, I just anticipate that we're gonna have some serious issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to comment at this time about where we are in this process? I think we've covered all of the history up to this point, and we know that what the problem is that we face. But is there anyone that would like to comment any further on where we should go from here? Okay, and seeing no hands raised, thank you very much for that. I do not believe, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at them and then. I'm sorry, Mrs. Romansky, you were next. Thank you for waiting.
No worries.
Too many things to look at all at once.
Yeah, I don't, this is why when we do Board of Ed meetings, I have Amber. You need an Amber. I'm just telling you that right now. Because she does all that part for me. She makes me look amazing. So I hope this next question doesn't sound sarcastic or whatever. So we've had a lot of discussion, like you said, a lot of history. We've had a lot of budget committee meetings where we've talked about sort of how that we got to that 911, that 9.11%, sorry, not 911. So I'm wondering, and I don't know if City Manager Salomon is still here, but is there, maybe it helps us on the board to understand how he arrived at the 2.4. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to pose that question to the city manager?
Yeah, that was, can you help us understand the rationale, city manager?
I can. I try to shy away. It's not my purview to tell you where to cut. That's the Board of Ed's sole responsibility. All I can do is make a bottom line recommendation to the city council. I look at the overall fiscal condition of the city and what I personally think that the city can afford for a tax increase or a decrease or whatever. And coupled with the city side of the budget, I put that out there. So it's more of a fiscal a fiscal overview than saying, well, I think I can cut 3 million out of the board budget. I'd leave it to the council to decide if they want to, well, they could cut the budget or they could raise. Now, they haven't done that because I've been on the low side, I know that. But, so I look at it as a fiscal situation rather than any individual situation. I really shy away from saying, oh, transportation could be cut $1 million, or I don't look at it like that. I look at it in the macro way, the fiscal impact way. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Thank you.
Yes, she appears to be satisfied with that answer. Thank you very much. Singh Khalsa, you have been waiting very patiently.
That's
applause, sir.
Yep. So, of course, thank you very much for all coming together in these times of crisis and trying to figure things out. And I completely understand from bottom of my heart the consequences that City Council is facing if we go further for that undesignated fund and how it will affect the bond rating. So I share the same concerns, and being a taxpayer, of course, I don't want my taxes to go up. But at the same time, I have spent a lot of time with this budget myself. I'm on the budget committee, and seems like this is the first time we are actually, first of all, trying to figure things out in a collective manner. And the other thing is, I really see some honest budget coming. So of course I cannot, I don't want to demoralize anyone, at this point. We're already going through crisis and being at home, and it's a lot of things we have to, deal with. But I think it's an honest budget. I will advocate for that. Of course, it's a very difficult time. How are we going to manage this? And times will get more difficult. The reason is that this COVID-19 going to affect businesses. Being a business owner, I can tell you my business has gone half. And of course, it will affect our, how people are going to pay property tax. We will be dealing with a lot of different issues, so that's one thing, and it will not go away easily. And of course, being as a city, we all need to work, how we can increase the tax basis so we can afford education budget. But that thing will be extended for a while, looks like it. On the other hand, like Joe, you said, including the grant pieces into that 3-year plan when we were projecting, some of these grants will be going away in 2 years. So we have to consider that if we are doing long-term planning, how we can be on the stable budget when we don't have to get into these kind of conflicts or do so much brainstorming how we gonna exist. I did one calculation because a lot of people ask how we can reduce the achievement gap and all that. And when people compare NFA to Norwich Public Schools, of course NFA is at the top, and Norwich Public Schools, we all know, we are in the struggling times. But we also need to see, like with that latest PDF that I got for NFA, it breaks down per grade money that's been going to NFA, which is almost $7.8 million per grade, and that's why they're getting quality education and giving all kinds of things to students so they can be somewhere in their life. Whereas, if we compare it to our budget, we are very low per grade budget that we have in our, and if we compare that, and if we want to be stable at par with NFA, I think total budget might go to $109 million for our whole education system, including NFA. So of course, we have to consider the fact, what I will say is, we are trying our level best, just to be on the minimum to cope up with all the regulations that state have, especially with the special ed regulations, which keep on increasing, and they will increase more. that's my only appeal. Of course, we have to figure this out sooner than later. And, it's a tough time. So I will request City Council to please do one more time, see how much maximum you can help the education budget. And then we need to sit together and see if we can cope up with that. If we're not gonna dig into undesignated funds, then of course we need a serious discussion. What services needs to be cut? We're already at the bottom of our services in school system. So how many services needs to be cut? The other thing is, of course, I will echo the fact that when we talk about HR department, I think that department needs to be reporting to superintendent. So there is no communication gaps. And the munis, of course, it will be a long-term plan how that $675,000 we can make it worth it that we spend on munis. But it was need of we didn't do any kind of luxury. It was the need because school system has to change their software. So these are some of my thoughts that I captured. But, I'm glad that we are at least talking about all these things, which we have not done in past, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Koulos, you had your hand raised there for a moment.
Yes. All right. My comment, basically to mirror what Singh was saying about the NFA budget. If we're going to get a 2.4% increase and NFA is at least 3, possibly 3.4, 3.8, figuring in the increase in the special ed costs, we have to, anything that exceeds our 2.4% is going to be a drain on us. So in order to meet the full percentage increase of NFA's budget, we're going to have to take away from, if it doesn't match NFA's increase, we're going to have to take away from our limited funds, basically acting as an undesignated fund of our money to feed NFA, to fully fund them. So that difference between our 2.4% increase and whatever the total increase is on the NFA side, I haven't run the numbers. If it's 3.4, 3.8, whatever it is, with the total increase from present to what it will be, we have to at least match that so that we're not acting as a drain on the money that is basically in the pre-K through 8 programs that we run at Norwich Public Schools.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Betancourt, you have the floor.
It just quickly, I know the overall NFA budget increase in the original BOE budget said 6.6%. So for a tuition increase, and now is because of the special ed costs. So I just want to be, I'm not sure what the number is now, if it's changed with the update or what. I mean, I certainly, and I mentioned this before, something you have no control over is what NFA is going to, or little control over, let's put it this way, is what NFA is going to charge for tuition. And those kind of things, I think, are legitimate things that should be considered for funding, and items you have no control over. I'm not trying to penalize the K through 8 system for the benefit of NFA personally. That's what I'm thinking, but I'm not convinced of what the actual number is for NFA though, so that's my problem.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this particular discussion?
Stacy Gould?
You have the floor, ma'am.
Okay, so just to be clear, I'm looking at this document that says Norwich Free Academy 2021 budget at a glance, which says that the general tuition increase is 3%. So did we find out that there's going to be a larger than 3% increase to Norwich? Because this is what it's telling me here on this piece of paper. That's sort of question one. And question number 2 is, hearing what some of the people have said today, that the 9.11% increase is unrealistic and probably will not be approved by the council. Has the Board of Education, or will the Board of Education be sitting down to discuss what cuts will have to be made on the BOE side, depending on what the council finally approves? Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Yes, Mrs. Romansky, I see you have your hand raised. You have the floor.
Well, so and if other Board of Ed members can sort of keep me honest here. So I think the 6.6% number that was being referenced in regards to NFA was the answer to a question that was asked, I want to say by Mr. Daniels at a Board of Ed meeting. I can't remember what the exact question was, but I think he might have asked what the increase in their overall budget was from last year to their projected budget. But it wasn't in reference to.
It was just the bottom line difference between last year's NFA tuition and what you guys have forecasted in the published BOE budget. That's what the 6.6 was.
Okay, so I was wrong. And then
Most of that's attributable to the special ed costs.
Okay.
Above 3% part anyway.
Okay, thank you. And to answer the second question, yes. We have not sat down and had that conversation yet, but yes.
I'm going to talk about the calendar in a matter of fact in our next agenda item, but thank you for that. Is there anyone else that would like to contribute to this part of the discussion? Yes, Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just real quick, during all this discussion, I reached out to a member of the Board of Trustees again, and I will make another attempt to try to help glean more detailed information for everyone. And we'll go from there. In fact, he's just texting me back again. So I hope I'll have more information from their perspective to help solve some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Romansky.
So as a follow-on to the mayor's comment, perhaps I don't know if it's out of line to ask that perhaps Superintendent Stringfellow and I might be included in your next conversation, so that way the telephone game doesn't happen if we are all at the table together. I don't know if that's allowed.
Mr. Mayor? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Hello?
Yes, you have the floor.
I'm unmuted. Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to make that happen. Absolutely. Secondhand multiple meetings does not help at all. This is very complex, but I will make that request as well. And thank you, Heather.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just think it makes more sense for us all to be at the table at the same time.
Or on the phone. Yep, I know.
Yeah, the virtual table.
Absolutely, it does. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Betancourt, you have the floor.
Yeah, real quick, just the obviously, we need a pretty much total breakdown of what NFA is proposing to charge us for tuition, as far as the whole thing, numbers and tuition for each category and all those kind of things, and an overall total. So, what they're thinking the numbers are right now, and, probably should be basing it off that. So, this is I'm not comfortable with budgets that have moving targets. So this is a kind of a new excursion for me. So we'll have to see what feedback we get from NFA, I think, because I'm generally speaking, I'm in favor of helping the Board of Ed with any increase that NFA gives, but at the same time, I'm not trying to go broke doing it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone that would like to contribute to the current discussion? Anyone with any other thoughts they would like to add to this agenda item? Okay, I think we really talked that one out, and I'm very happy with the product of that conversation. Moving on, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, before, sorry, I had my hand raised. This is Carlene.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of this agenda item was to potentially brainstorm some recommendations and next steps. And before we do move on, we've had some really great conversations, but I'm wondering, since this is the first time we've had this committee in place, are there any clear directions or guidance that you all could help to provide the Board of Ed? And I'm so sorry if I don't know if I'm speaking, I don't want to speak for the board, but I just wanted to ask, as a committee, are there some clear guidance and directions that you could provide the Board of Ed moving forward in our next conversation?
Well, and I will, I'll let my fellow council members weigh in, and I'll make my remarks brief. The agenda item is discussion and possible action on recommendations to the city council. So if this committee was ready to say, our recommendation to the city council is X dollars, or do this, or try to do that, then that's what this agenda item would allow for. To turn that around and to say this committee is now going to make a recommendation back to the board, that's a very narrow line that we can walk, because neither this committee nor the city council can tell or even seem to tell that the Board of Ed what to do with their budget, except I would only say, and we're going to look at the calendar in a moment, but I would only say at the next Board of Ed meeting, while we are still in the process of working our way through the budget, the next Board of Ed needs to talk about, okay, what can we do now in terms of things that we might have on the council that we would like you to look at. I think we've expressed some tonight, and my colleagues on the council might have additional things that they might want to say, and the members of the board could take those things with them back to the board. Mr. Betancourt, you have the floor.
Yeah, but for me anyway, this whole exercise was meant to do what it's doing, and that's to open the lines of communication. Because honestly, in the past, we've never really done anything like this before, and my experience dates back to at least 2005 doing these things. So we would get a budget from the Board of Ed. They would do a presentation. We'd argue back and forth, give it a little give and take or whatever, and come up with a bottom line number, whether it had any basis in fact at all. To be quite honest with you, I don't ever think it did. So but we were all doing the best we could with what we had. So this particular exercise, I think, is very good, because one, it lets us get basically our feelings out on what's going on, but also I think we have a better discussion over the relevant facts and what's going on. I never remember having a discussion regarding the line items of the special ed budget before at the city council level, because and obviously we're talking about millions of dollars here, so these are things that need to be considered to some extent, as far as, and I certainly want to have the information as a city council person to make the best possible decision that's in the best interest of not only the taxpayer, but of the children that I think are obligated to provide a good education for. So those all things have to come into play here. So but it's a tough, I know this is a tough thing. It really is, because I'm not, I would just, if I had my druthers, I'd say, yeah, oh yeah, give away the money. Yeah, no problem. Let's face it, that won't work. We can't make that work. That'd be crazy. So so we have some hard choices to make, and it's very uncomfortable choices, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not really crazy about them. I do not, and I do not take the job that Heather, you've got to do, and the rest of the Board of Ed lightly, or Superintendent Stringfellow. But these are difficult decisions in a district that has financial issues, let's face it, and it's going to be even more complicated by the COVID-19 situation. So I just hope that, we can try to be a little patient with each other, because sometimes I get a little emotional about this, especially when it comes to the rule of law. And I'm not always as cordial as I might normally be. So so I beg forgiveness and understanding in those situations. But I just believe things that should be done the way they're supposed to be done in general. And the city council viewpoint is going to be different from what the Board of Ed viewpoint is on some of this stuff. So, and just if everybody understands where everyone's coming from, that, hopefully we can get, I don't think we're going to get a good product here that works for everybody. I think we're just going to get a product that is the best we can come up with. It's one of those kind of situations, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 5, items for the next meeting agenda. And I would just ask that if you have any items that you would like to see me add under new business on the next agenda, but please just email those things to me, and I will make sure that if I don't understand, I'll reach back. But otherwise, I will be happy to add those to our next meeting agenda. We don't have to further that conversation right now. The next up would be the schedule for the next meeting. I think it's important for us to meet frequently in this crunch time, and I'm proposing the idea of having a meeting next Thursday at the same time by the same Zoom venue. And you don't have to give me an answer right now. Feel free to just let me know if it would be April 30th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom meeting, just like tonight. You can let me know by email. I'll send out an email reminder anyway. But you can let me know if that works for you. And then our last agenda item of the night, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Alderman Bettencourt, seconded by Board of Ed member Sharmless. I know I just butchered that. I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
I see all hands raised. The chair says aye. Any opposed? No opposed. We are adjourned at 8:07 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody. I believe this was a very productive and fruitful meeting. Have a great night, and I will speak to you soon. I look forward to us meeting again next week.
Joe, thanks for scheduling on Zoom. I think it's really helpful.
Okay, I'm glad that it's working for you guys. And
yep. Take care.
Thank you for your
Can
patience.
I ask a quick question?
Yes.
For my minutes?
Yeah.
Do I have to note when people came late because we didn't do an attendance at the beginning? We probably should have.
Yeah, that was.
But we'll have to try to remember that next time. But because I believe Carlene joined us late. So I didn't know if I should be noting that, and I think Mark came in late.
No, actually,
they were here, but I just didn't know it.
Yes,
yeah, I didn't see them.
Right, people were coming in as I did the preamble.
Oh, very good.
When I called the meeting to order, all 28 people were
very
here.
good. That's all I needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Stay safe, everyone.